Hi, I'm Sally Abed.
And I'm Noam Shuster.
We're the hosts of Groundwork, a podcast about activists working on the ground in Israel, Palestine to end the occupation.
To end this endless bloodshed.
And to demand justice, peace, and equality for all. Welcome to Season 3 of Groundwork. I am extremely excited to introduce my new co-host. Many of you might know her, Noam Shuster.
Hey, Sally. Thank you for having me on your third season. Where was I on the previous 2 seasons? Why only now? I'm so offended.
I'm very happy you're here with us today.
For the rest of the season, we're going to be speaking to so many inspiring people about their amazing work that they're doing on the ground. And maybe we should make it clear to the listeners that this first episode, it's going to be just you and I, Sally. Just you and I, kind of like an intro episode.
We wanted to really, in this first episode, to share a bit about how we're thinking about this show for Season 3, especially at this moment in time here in Israel, Palestine. But let's start with you, Noam. Who are you? Who's Noam?
Okay, so hi everyone. To those of you who don't know me, I am a comedian and an activist. Less of a comedian. Those past few months, it's been really, really, really difficult doing comedy shows and thinking of how and where and to who to tell jokes. I started doing comedy after working for many years in the UN. I was in charge of a peace-building mission that was working under the radar with really extreme right-wing populations in Israeli society, which is roughly like 95% of Israelis, just kidding. And this was a really, really intense political work. And a few years ago, the UN closed this project and I started doing comedy. I started telling jokes in Hebrew, Arabic, and English. I speak Arabic because I am so good in languages.
Fluently.
Fluently. I learned Arabic from a really, really, really young age in Wahat Salam Neve Shalom, which is the oasis of peace in English. It is the only place in Israel where Jews and Palestinians live together by choice. A lot of jokes became viral in the Arab world about normalization. And I was like, wow, as an activist, I influenced 20 people. And now I'm making a viral joke about normalization between Saudi and Israel. I had this, if you remember this...
Dubai. Oh, that was just great.
Yeah, the Dubai song that was mocking kind of like the way Israel is signing peace agreements with Dubai because we love Arabs only when they're in fancy malls and we don't know how to create agreements with, Palestinians here locally. And I was like, wow, with jokes, I can reach 20 million people. That's cool. And I was really... And I am still, I believe in the power of comedy and I believe that comedy is activism and activism is comedy. And, I started doing comedy to challenge the discourse, to talk about, the power dynamics, the power structure, to, use humor for very ambitious things. And it's been really, really hard these past few months. So locally, I don't really feel like I have shows. My Palestinian audiences are mourning because their people are being slaughtered in Gaza and there's so much pain and so much grief. And what happened on October 7th, I lost friends and I lost people that I really, really love who did not deserve to be massacred in such a brutal way. And I mourn for the hostages and I am grieving for everyone. And my comedy writer who lost her cousin in the Nova Festival and so many people. The response, the collective response, we just slaughtered thousands of innocent people, that we just made millions of people refugees and destroyed their homes and all their academic institutions and all the documentation of war crimes that are not just done in the fringes of the fringe or the extremists of the extremes. It's really been a big question. What is my role these days? What is our role these days? And so I've been watching you doing a lot, oh my God, you guys in standing together. Do you have time to sleep together? Or do you... Sorry, oops, I meant sleep, not together. I swear I mean,
why not?
No, I'm joking, but watching, the social media presence, in English, in Arabic, in Hebrew, watching you also take it to the next level and also run for office in Haifa, like it looks like you're doing so much.
Yeah, the first Palestinian to lead a joint slate ever. And we actually got elected during this time.
Amazing.
I do want to say, first of all, I also believe in the power of comedy, and I believe in your power to weaponize it, by the way. To anyone who's joining us for the third season, I'm Sally Abed. I am a Palestinian citizen of Israel. I am part of the national leadership of Standing Together, نقف معا نمضي بيحد, the largest Jewish Arab grassroots movement in Israel that organizes and mobilizes Jews and Palestinians around issues of peace, equality, and social justice. I've been like literally just sad constantly.
Oh, Habibti. Yeah.
I think we are always on this survival mode. As a Palestinian citizen of Israel, I just have to fight for the legitimacy, the mere legitimacy of my existence. And the fact that I am not only a Palestinian holding, collective responsibility, grief, and history, but I'm also holding this immense responsibility of living within Israel and actually demanding ownership over like the political sphere in Israel, like actually succeeding to lead the Jewish Israeli public. Not all of it, a very small fraction of it for now. And I think for many people, that's just not a legitimate thing to do unless you completely relinquish yourself, isolate yourself from the Israeli society. You're not a legitimate part of the Palestinian struggle, of the fight. I feel grossly just misunderstood. And it's a very, very difficult moment to feel isolated from my people.
Can I tell you something honestly? Honestly. For the past few months, some people reached out to me and were like, what do you think about standing together? Like, is it like this? Is it fake? Like, is it normalization? Is it this?
Whitewashing the occupation. Yeah.
And it's been really fascinating. My question is to people who are constantly criticizing every organization and every attempt to like talk about, equality and justice in a joint movement. I'm like, my question to you is like, what are you doing? Like, what have you done today?
Is that the battle you want to pick? The one of the largest movements actually mobilizing people for ceasefire and against the occupation.
Let's say they're softer than you. Let's say they don't fit 100% with your thing. Like, is this what you want to put the focus on as we're trying to fight forces like the Ben Gvir, the settlers, So yeah, it's tough.
I think, first of all, like I never asked you, like, what are you doing? I think everyone does what they think, how they perceive reality and how they think it should be changed. And in many ways, for many people abroad, the Israeli society or the Palestinian society, from both sides is doomed, right? It's like people here have nothing to do with their own reality. Like no responsibility, no capacity, no role into actually changing the reality. Like everyone is almost like debating our own lives, while the polarized conversation basically leaves no space to understand, okay, what is actually our role? This was always a very, very important question to be asked. Towards Palestinian freedom, towards collective liberation, towards ending the occupation, towards, peace, justice, and equality for all. But since October 7th, I think this conversation, and since really this explosion of momentum about the Palestinian cause, I think it is more critical than ever that people actually get a view on people on the ground, both Palestinians and Jews. I think it's extremely critical, and I'm so happy I get to do that with you, and we get to bring that to people abroad.
I think one of the first kind of desperate feelings that we all felt on October 7th, and I'll speak for myself, is that it was like a mix of these emotions where, like, you and I, let's say, largely, we belong to a political camp, let's say, even if we have our differences, we belong to a political camp that has been warning that managing the conflict and the occupation is going to one day blow up in our faces, right? And I think that when October 7th happened, it was like a multi-layered kind of reaction of like, shit, like we told you so, like and it's not a fun position to be in. Like, shit, we knew this was coming and we were trying to warn everyone. And simultaneously was a lot of people from our camp, let's say anti-occupation activists or people from organizations were survivors or lost family members on October 7th. I felt this desperation. We're like, oh my God, like how do we, what do we do now? Like how do we talk about this? And the right wing hijacked people's memory, like Vivian Silver, like taking her memory and saying, oh, you see the peace activist Vivian Silver who believed in peace with Arabs, and look, they massacred her. And what, Jonathan, the son of Vivian Silver, the peace activist, was trying to say to those people, to the right wing, is, no, my mother was right. She tried to ultimately, tragically prevent her own death, And now with the trauma and the pain and this horrific loss of lives still happening in Gaza, it is almost like how do we continue to do what we are doing?
Actually, you know what, Noam? I think since October 7th, there has actually been a shift where we know exactly what we're doing. Like, there's no way back. It's either we go in a different way or we're just literally like mutual destruction, doomed.
I'm thinking of this season on this podcast that we are going to record, and the different episodes that we're going to have, and the different guests that we're going to interview. And I can't help but think that the listeners will listen to these amazing people who are doing human rights and justice and equality. There always comes a time, this question of like, but how much do you really influence? But how much hope do you have? But where is this all going? But everything seems so doomed. And you see who gets the most views, who gets the most listens, who gets the most clicks. It's the people who are, we're not
Either radical, polarized, or cynical.
Or straight up posting fake news that will get us nowhere.
Let's zoom in within the Israeli public, yeah? First of all, we can talk about, the completely different reality that we're consuming as Palestinians and Jews in Israel. The average Palestinian opens up their Instagram and their algorithm is on the atrocities and the massacres happening in Gaza and in the West Bank. Influencers, Palestinian and pro-Palestinian influencers in the US. And the Palestinian public in Israel, by the way, consumes Israeli media as well. So we actually are aware of the duality in many ways. I think that's I always joke about that, like it's our superpower. Like we're literally the only people on earth who actually consume both Hebrew and Arabic media, like all the time, regularly. We actually hold a duality. That's Rashid Khalidi actually said that to me. Like, you're literally the only ones who have any capacity to even imagine, a shared future. But the Israeli public, the Jewish Israeli public, is stuck. The average Jewish Israeli obviously opens up their algorithm and their channel news, and it's a completely different reality. A completely different reality.
Different worlds.
And they're stuck with this one narrative, this necessity of war, this necessity of massacres, this necessity of military control and oppression and violence and bombing and starvation and incarceration, because that's the only option for security.
There's something even more unfortunate if Israelis consume what you are consuming in Arabic. What's more dangerous is that there is a language and there is a way and a system that can justify this, to blame all the deaths in Gaza, to blame Hamas for everything, to create kind of systems that can justify those things in our heads. And that's what's scary, that even if you are exposed, there is
that's the thing, because you don't think like you necessarily have to justify it. And I'm saying this not from like extreme right wing. I'm literally talking about like young mothers my age who are like center liberal, who like view themselves as like humanists, liberal, moral, like honestly like very nice, like young people who I actually really like, I would have like really liked and be friends with.
Yeah.
And then you go into these discussions, and that's rare, by the way, to go into these discussions that way.
Let me guess what they tell you.
Yeah.
They tell you, but Sally, what choice do we have?
Exactly.
We didn't start this. We didn't
Exactly.
choose this.
Exactly.
So what, you want me to wait at
Exactly.
home until they come and kill my own children? We don't have a choice. We didn't choose.
Exactly. It's the necessity, the justification of these atrocities. And it's a justification, by the way, that has been happening for decades. Yeah, we necessarily have to occupy and to siege and to incarcerate and to, discriminate here within Israel and control. We need to control. And that has obviously created a complete dehumanization of Palestinians. So when you tell her, there are 40,000 Palestinians who died, 15,000 children who died, she's like, yeah, that's horrible. But like, like we can't, what can we do? And I think that kind of moral dissonance, that kind of cognitive dissonance is something, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy for the Palestinian people, obviously. It is a tragedy for the Israeli public, who is stuck in this and who is also doesn't have the proper sufficiently courageous enough leadership to actually provide them with an alternative. And I think that's our role right now.
How do you then have patience?
My patience is the fact, this is exactly what I tell her. I tell her literally that I think this is one of the most difficult parts of my job and the way that I view my role as a Palestinian who also assumes leadership of the Israeli public. I almost need to like validate their experience, validate why she feels like it's necessary, and then tell her like it's not necessary. And like, I understand why you are somehow tolerating this, but it's not necessary, and you shouldn't tolerate this either. I shouldn't, as a Palestinian, be suffering like this. We shouldn't be suffering like this, and you shouldn't be told that this is for your security when it's not. And I do believe that eventually this is the effective way to go. I think we should just reclaim what security is, and we should reclaim who we are and what we actually want, and the fact that the oppressor is not the Israeli collective.
You're saying the oppressor is not the Israeli public?
I think the Israeli public condones. I think the Israeli public justifies. I think the Israeli public normalizes these atrocities because they are told it's necessary for their own existence. And I'm saying that also because I truly believe it's true. I don't think there is a collective that is immoral like that, who can be like collectively oppressing. But I also think it's strategically necessary for us, like honestly, like strategically necessary for us to recognize the interest that the Israeli public has in ending the occupation. Because if we don't, we're doomed. If we don't recognize the benefit, the interest that the Israeli public has in peace, what's the point?
I think that what you're bringing up is a larger question. It's like, what will ultimately create the change? Is it going to come from outside? Is it going to come from the Israeli public? Is it going to come from this pressure, from that pressure, from this, from that? And I think that, and I'm going to say something, and I'm saying this as an Israeli Jew, and I'm so sad that I'm saying this, but Sally, if everything that's happened in the past few months didn't wake people up to the point where there are 250 captives. I mean, I'm speaking from the beginning of October 7th, like 250 captives, your sons and daughters are going to fight a war that you don't know what the intentions or the strategy of this war is. There is a prime minister that is clearly trying to save his own ass with this war. There is an entire system that failed you and continues to fail you for very, very long months. You're burying your kids. The hostages are not returned. If this high price is not something up until now that has woken up people, I'm going insane. It's like what will it take for people to wake up? And I admire you.
A new alternative that they can choose. Right now, they don't have that. No one is giving them another option. You know, for me as a Palestinian in Israel, I don't care about drawing the map. I just want to live equally and freely in my homeland and securely. And I think that's what most people here want. The 7 million Jews and 7 million Palestinians. That's what they want. They want to live freely, equally, and securely on this land. And I think the most realistic next step to provide for the Israeli public right now is peace and security in the form of ending the military occupation and the military siege over the West Bank and Gaza, you know, demanding from a new leadership, you know, to sit in a room with the necessary people from Palestine, from around the world, to actually understand how we're going to make that happen, how we're going to provide, you know, security and peace. I think that's the very, very necessary basic step that we need to move forward towards a more holistic, just peace for all.
So simple.
Right. I agree. I really think it's simple, just like the fact that Black people shouldn't be enslaved is simple, and just the fact that women should be able to vote is simple, but it wasn't that simple.
I mean, I salute you for having the capability or space in you to talk solutionizations now. I admire you that you have the patience to speak to this mother in the playground that is saying there is no other choice, there is no this, there is no that. And I think in our conversations here in this podcast, we can definitely challenge the people who are actually on the ground and are asking these questions. But I'm seriously wondering, I feel like I'm at a point where I'm looking around me, and yes, some protests give me hope, and some organizations that are doing amazing work give me hope, and individuals give me hope. And history, by the way, gives me hope. Rwanda, Northern Ireland, Yugoslavia, like things that are unimaginable that, you know, changed throughout the history. I want to say we're not special. We're not the only ones. Like this human suffering and human misery and oppressed that becomes oppressor. And, you know, people getting liberation and getting freedom and military occupations that end. We're not the first and not the last ones to be going through this. But being part of the Israeli collective right now, I'm so ashamed, and my shame is not helping anyone. I feel so much guilt. I feel such hopelessness, you know, when I look at social media comments, at the kind of messages that I get on social media, just for advocating for a ceasefire and like return of hostages and speaking of Palestinian suffering. And it's so, you know, difficult to think of what has been enabled in the Israeli society during this time, and to not let it completely despair me and and everyone around me. And
so I'll give you a positive anecdote. First of all, I understand what you're saying. I don't feel the shame. I feel just pure rage.
mm-hmm.
You know, and I actually, you know, weaponize that and really try to understand how do I use it.
Now it's like the Israeli Jews feeling guilty and the Palestinian who needs to give her like a hopeful anecdote.
It's not.
And, oh my
it's
God,
not.
I'm so sorry. No.
first of all, I'm very happy to be able to give you a hope. I think mine is survival, like survival optimism. It's like I have to have it. But one thing, on October 9th, standing together, I do believe that we were like the first ones that actually like said, okay, like let's go for a deal, hostage deal. Do you know how much it pulled within the Israeli public back then?
No.
0.06%.
Of course.
Less than 1%. Okay.
Oh my God.
Do you know how many of the Israeli public right now support a deal?
Tell me.
Almost 70%.
70%?
Yes, a deal.
They
It's
support
like
a
different
deal.
different variations of deal, of ceasefire, of like different variations of that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that mobilization works, movements work, social, civil society works, Jewish-Palestinian partnership works. Is it enough? No. Are we really close to a place where we can really imagine that we are the hegemony, that we are in this new paradigm, that we are in this new understanding where we truly, everyone here in Israel understands that every Palestinian deserves freedom and equality and prosperity and dignity just as much as they do, and that it is intertwined, that it is, interdependent. That's the paradigm we need to get to. That's the paradigm where we can actually mobilize the masses of people around this. Are we close to there? I don't think so. Are we actually getting closer? I absolutely think so.
Really?
I absolutely think so. And I think, hopefully, throughout this episodes and throughout, meeting these people, we will also be able to strengthen that idea and maybe even give you a little bit more hope.
Oh God, I can't do this podcast. You're gonna make me look so bad. I can't.
No,
do it.
I'm not.
I quit. Where's the manager?
I am chronically optimistic. I'm chronically optimistic.
You're Palestinian. You're like Jews. You have all the resilient stuff in you. So, حفرنا.
זו אותה מילה. That's the same word. So in Arabic and Hebrew, we dug, which means we went really deep into things, and it's really hard to wrap it up.
But you need to go because you have all the solutions and the hope to take care of. I'm going to write some jokes. So we have to end this episode. It was really good to kind of warm up the season. Thank you for having me as a co-host.
Thank you for having me again. As we said, and I think a lot of what we just discussed really maybe just the surface of the noise and the hatred and the distractions and the polarizations that we deal with here in Israel, and that many of you listeners abroad are also dealing with. And we hope that we'll be able to give you something different on the ground. You will meet other activists to join the discussion going forward. So stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe, rate us, and tell your friends. This episode was produced and edited by Yoshi Fields. Groundwork is produced by Elisheva Goldberg, Acosta, Yoshi Fields, Julie Subrin, and Dina Kraft. Theme music is by System Ali, a multilingual binational hip-hop group whose cultural activity is deeply rooted in the communities where they work.
The show is a joint production of New Israel Fund and the Alliance for Middle East Peace. New Israel Fund is the premier founder and organizer of progressive Israeli civil society, with over $300 million from tens of thousands of people to hundreds of organizations working for change on the ground for over 40 years. The Alliance for Middle East Peace is the largest and fastest growing network of Palestinian and Israeli peace builders. You can learn more about them at their website in nif.org and almep.org.
And you can learn more about our show there or at groundworkpodcast.com.